Welcome back to The Scoop. I'm Fallon Cryer and I am so excited for our next guest today. She's an international speaker, best-selling author, leadership consultant, and a strong and passionate advocate for girls' leadership and for advancing women in the workplace. Welcome to The Scoop, Joan Kuhl.
Thanks, Fallon. I love talking to you. I can't wait for our conversation today.
It's so exciting. We were bonding just before this, and I feel like we're twin spirits.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through probably a lot of similar experiences personally and professionally, which will light up this conversation in so many ways.
It's just amazing. And you've been giving what I think is an amazing gift to women here at EMS. You're running some workshops on setting breakthrough goals and healthy boundaries for women in events. You're fresh off the stage. Tell us a little bit, what are you hoping that participants walk away with?
I love that you asked me that question, because one of the things I've been really staying true to every time I teach workshops, anything, is to set an intention for the audience and ask them to set an intention for why they showed up. So today and yesterday, my intention was, I want you to walk away with an aha moment. We're talking about things that deplete our time and our energy. I want you to just have that recognition of feeling validated, feeling seen. So that's one thing. The second is, and I know you have noticed this about my work, I don't want you to just be inspired. I want you to feel that, yes, but I want you to walk away with an actionable, research-backed tool, something that's realistic in whatever's going on in your world that you're actually going to do something about tomorrow. So those are my two intentions.
That's fantastic. And I love the way that you frame it too, is women don't just want to be inspired. We want to be armed. You know, there's something really beautiful and action-oriented around arming yourself. There's something, it comes with just that extra little bit of confidence.
It's true. But I also think, we gravitate towards all these things that feed our soul, and that only lasts for so long. We're like, we're having some challenges. What do I do about it? Because I don't want things to continue the way they are. And so that's what I work through, is research that backs up anything I advise you to do. I've tried it as a working mom or a business owner, corporate turned entrepreneur, or the women I work with all over the world have tried it. And I can give you even more realistic examples to relate to whatever you're struggling with.
And talking about struggle, these last couple of years, for people in events, but also for women, can you talk a little bit about how women have been and continue to be disproportionately impacted by some of recent history?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because I'm all about the data, because this isn't just the right thing to do or the nice thing to do. This is the smartest thing to do to talk about this, the economic impact of it. So we know during the global pandemic that women lost their jobs, right? We know that more women were impacted economically and employment-wise than men. In addition, women already took on 2/3 of the lion's share of work of running a household, if they're raising a family or caregiving in any aspect, creating a life, right? So they're doing all of this. Their emotional and mental well-being hit an all-time low. But here's the thing, we're in 2022 talking, right? Men have regained the unemployment or the impact to their jobs on average, not every specific person, but right, globally on average, women are still at an alarming rate dropping out of the workforce, downgrading their responsibilities, saying like, oh, I don't want to take on that big project because I am stretched, I am overwhelmed. And that's the urgency for my work. I've always been doing this, but now I'm like, I need to help her change the company that pays her paycheck today, and stay, retain, advance, all those things.
And it's not just about the company, but those critical conversations at home as well, because we're multifaceted beings. What are you seeing are the critical kinds of conversations that you need to have in your partnerships in order to lay the foundation for what you want to do at work?
Well, here's what encourages me. When you look at, even it started with Gen X, and so though, Gen X, then now like Gen Y, which is millennial, and Gen Z, more than 80% are in dual career households. So that means you've got two partners that are working, trying to strive towards their professional goals, right? But then you've got this house to maintain, or if you are in a stage like you're the sandwich generation where you've got aging parents, you're raising a family, you're feeling really stretched. So we know that there are outdated stereotypes about, men are associated with career, women are associated with family, and women are expected to take on all these extra things if he makes more money or if her time's not valued. So having these conversations at home, we didn't have the tools. We have all these conversations and more tools in the workplace than ever before, right, to talk about equity. But what about the most important organization in our life, our home? We need more tools, conversations to talk with our partner about what we want, what we need, so that it doesn't fall in her lap. She becomes the default, the she-fault for all those things.
I love the concept of the external conversation. Let's talk about the inner voice.
Yes.
What goes on inside us, because some of us, we have these unhelpful thought patterns, or we may hold on to ourselves. We're wired in a way that has these outdated beliefs.
Yes.
Explore that with me.
I mean, this is the majority of where I start every workshop, where I focus on with women of all ages, girls too, right? So first, when you think about confidence, put this visual in your mind. Imagine that decades of research have proved you don't have to be born with it. And there's times in your life where you have it and you're rocked to your core, like the pandemic, right? Confidence is actually built by putting your thoughts into action. So remember how you said, all I care about is you not just being inspired, you taking action, no matter how small it is. So that's what we need for confidence. Why is her confidence shaken? Well, self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, constantly feeling like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, all these ways that women judge themselves. And they are, come on, judged by everybody else too. Are we likable? Are we nice but not too nice? That on top of the perfectionism that we feel like we have to take on for all the roles that we play. There's a lot that happens. I call it her evil inner DJ. And she just spins all your worst hits. Remember that time when you spoke up at a meeting and everybody looked at like you were in over your head? Like, we have to figure out what's on our evil DJ's playlist. That's the first step to then conquering it. And ultimately, this is my last headline on this. To break through self-doubt and imposter syndrome, you don't have to change who you are. You do not have to gain another skill. We don't sign up for all these things. You have to feel enough as you are right now. And we need to be clear on our strengths and our value. That's like the objective of the work I do.
And what about a tool? I know that you love tools. When that DJ is spinning and you're in that spiral, mine happens at like 3:00 in the morning. I do my best stressing out at that time. Are there any tools or any techniques that we could apply to just get us back on track, get us into that confidence and action zone?
Yes, I'll give you one that you need to take as like homework and really sit with, and a second one that you can make in the back of your pocket. So the first one is, girls and women, research shows, do not spend as much time identifying their strengths and really even putting out into the world what they're great at, right? We like constantly are thinking about our weaknesses and our areas of development. When do you sit down, other than people that are in performance reviews or something, and say, like, here's what I'm good at. Here's what gives me energy, a strength that I have that like makes me feel fulfilled and motivated. So we have to write down our strengths. If you need to talk to somebody in your life that you trust and ask them, like, what do you see in me, right? So if we're clear on our strengths, then in those moments, we remind ourselves like, all right, maybe that's not my thing, but here's what I bring to the table, and that's enough. That takes some work, right? The second one is called the maybe story. This sounds kind of silly, but social science, neuroscience backs it up. So the maybe story is, let's say you're in that funk and you're like in a negative spiral, you're overthinking something that happened at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., it's keeping you up, or 2 p.m., you can't focus. You tell yourself a story that starts every sentence with the word maybe. So if you're freaking out about speaking up at a meeting and you feel like you rambled, maybe I didn't ramble. Maybe in this day and age of hybrid meetings, it took me that time to explain my thoughts and ideas in a way that everybody could follow along. So maybe story just means, it doesn't mean it has to be accurate, and we're not trying to solve for that. We're just trying to get out of this self-doubt funk that is what holds women back from speaking up, asking for more, going after something that they want or deserve. Those are my two things.
I love that. And another thing that I really like, and I think I saw an interview with you once where you talked about it, which is when you're faced with a new challenge or you're faced with something and you're a little bit nervous, is spend the time documenting the times that you've done it and been successful before. It's amazing how many times where, and I think elite athletes are really wired this way as well. Even people who are right at the top of their game, they wake up sometimes and they're like, can I do this? Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. One of my most popular workshops is actually usually with boards and executives that are predominantly male, because I've spent a lot of time in the world of sports. I've worked with the U.S. Soccer Organization, Major League Baseball, and studied women in sports. And so the athlete's mindset, particularly the female athlete's mindset, and her endurance and her resilience of everything that she has to go through, has taught me so much about what we all need. And that piece of just like It's owning your success. It's what I said about the strengths. Sometimes we need to visualize. I had this interview with Reese Witherspoon right before the pandemic, and I was freaking out because it's Reese Witherspoon and I love her. And I was like, if I screw up this interview, not only will it be disappointing for Forbes, who I'm writing for, but I will be humiliated. I look up to this person. So I just pushed my questions, my journalist questions aside. And I was like, how do I connect with this person? And what makes me good at what I do, connecting with people? So that's a great takeaway. I think an action step for others is just write things down for yourself. Maybe it's an album in your phone of moments where you felt confident or inspired, you traveled somewhere and you felt independent. Like, we need those things. Like, flip through the pictures or write things down, keep it in a drawer by your bedside. Remind yourself, it took a lot just to get to where you are today. You can do these other things.
We talked about strengths, and I know that I'm going back just a little bit here. Oftentimes, women in the workplace are put into situations where other people think it's their strength because they're good at it.
Oh,
but
yes.
It's not a strength because it sucks the life out of them. It's something that doesn't spark joy for them, and it is really draining. What advice do you have for women who are on this track and this success track and who are famous for doing what they always want to do, but they want to make a change and follow their heart and get off that track?
I honestly would say go back to that strengths list, because the first step is writing things down, right? And oftentimes we will write down things that we've been complimented on or awarded for, promoted for, but then you go back down with a second lens and you say, which of these things give me energy? For example, in my corporate days, I could go on an Excel journey. Like, I would just be like staying late in the office, late on Excel documents. Did that give me energy? No, but I was good at it. It doesn't give me as much energy as this. But I think we also have to acknowledge there's some things that get us in the door, right? But we have to repurpose our time to spend it on the things that make us feel alive. And we have to teach people how to treat us. We have to teach them how to see us. And so it just takes us, you have to take a beat. That was called the take a beat strategy for so many things, of saying, wait, hold up. I feel drained. I look successful on paper, but where am I spending my time? And the other advice I'd give there is think about your values. And how that's the workshop I taught here today, was how to think about how your values line up with where your time is going.
I love the conversation about career progression and teaching other people. And so that mentor-mentee relationship, you talk a lot about the importance of people who are in your corner and having mentors. One of the things that we've discovered, though, is in the wake of the Me Too movement, men have become more and more reluctant to take on mentees who are women, particularly young women in the workplace. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yes. First, it's troublesome, right? So men are 3 times more likely to be uncomfortable mentoring women, particularly women that are younger than them, because of what's come up and even all the good things that, Me Too and times have brought about. We need men. We need men in our lives as our trusted partners and teammates and allies, our proteges, our mentors, our sponsors, all those things. And the data shows that women do need 2 networks. One with men, so they can talk about what it takes to career progression, because more men are in positions of power and have more experience with advancement. But we also need women to empathize about the biased and stereotypical ways that we encounter what we do. For men, and I've launched a number of Male as Allies initiatives at different corporations with men that are like, wait a minute, I really want to lean into this, but what they tell me is, I'm nervous about what to say, what's the right thing to say, to what do women think of me? They're nervous about the mass judgment, and even if that's not their behaviors, how do they react to that? So all those are valid reasons, and I love it when I know those things. So here's the place to start. Start with, for men, right? Just setting boundaries for the relationship, and just saying, okay, I want to mentor this woman in my department. She's 3 levels junior to me. I'm going to sit down with her in a place and a setting that you'd feel just as comfortable bringing a woman as a man. If you don't feel comfortable bringing a woman to a sports event and you take men there all the time, I'm sorry, but right now you can't do that until you feel comfortable. And there's plenty of women that want to go to sports events and want to golf. And it's right? Hi. But again, if there's something going on in their evil inner DJ that tells them, wait, I'm not uncomfortable, well, then have it in the company cafeteria, go to an event like this. And the boundaries conversation is, here's why I want to help you. I really want you to succeed here. Here's what I see in you. And I want this to feel like a safe environment. What do you need from me to feel that? it's just sometimes we need some prompts. Men always tell me, like, can you just give me some guidelines, some conversation starters, and some boundaries? And that's where then organically a mentor and mentee relationship will grow.
You've said that you've sparked a lot of male ally programs
Yes.
in big corporates. I want to talk a little bit about your book, and something else that you say that I really love is sometimes the BS just gets a bit much. You know, when you're working for the man, pun intended, you know, you sometimes sit there, and I've spoken to a lot of women who are like, nah, I'm out.
Yeah.
I can't deal with this. And the thing that you say that I really love is, do you want to change jobs or do you want to change the world? And that reframing is so powerful. Can you talk a little bit about your book? And let's go through that.
And by the way, reframing is the most accessible tool. It's such a release for emotionally and mentally for us. So my book is called Dig Your Heels In, Navigate Corporate BS and Build the Company You Deserve. And I spent 14 years in corporate, then I launched my company, but corporate is the majority of my clients. So I still feel like I live in that world. And what I wanted to do was really talk candidly about the bias barriers that she encounters in her career. I've done so much research, thousands and thousands of interviews and focus groups and whatnot, talking to women along the way and men too about what they experience. Here's the thing about politics, not going away, right? Because politics, actually, the definition of it is when you're working in an organization that's complex and you've got managers vying for limited resources, there's always going to be human behavior there. I also taught this in the time workshop today, is we can't change people, not necessarily, maybe some people, but we can change how we react to them. And that's the biggest thing here that empowered me. Was it's not actually the task, the deliverable, the people, the situation that's haunting me. It's my reaction when they get the best of me, when they trigger me. And so a lot of my book, goes through all these elements of her confidence, her impact, her presence, and her relationships, because relationships are everything. We mistake the world of being meritocratic. It is not. You have to own your strengths. You have to figure out what you want and deserve, and you have to get the right relationships around you.
When we talk about relationships, some people say you are the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit about your mum. And tell us a little bit about your mum and how she laid the foundation, or helped to, for you to become the woman you are today and the mum that you are to your daughters.
There's so many dimensions of that. I appreciate you asking it. So the first decade of my life, it was just my mom and I. And so my mom role modeled for me really pursuing your ambition and your potential and taking risks to do that. She was an inner city school teacher in Philadelphia. Then she took 2 administrative assistant jobs to advance her degree. Then she started taking earning her pilot's license. I was stacked up in telephone books next to her, calling the shots. I don't know if that's legal or not. And that opened the door for her to go into the air traffic control industry, which is a government job. But for us, it tripled her income. We moved out of my grandparents' home. We got our own apartment. Now I'm thinking this is amazing and cool. And I was this kid that was a happy kid. I didn't know what was really going on behind the scenes, the microaggressions, the pay inequities, what it's like to be a single parent. I could go on and on. But she also didn't know what the heck it would take to get me where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to live in New York City and have this big dream life of wearing a business suit. I wasn't more specific than that. But that wasn't the path she took. So she made a key decision for me, which was enrolling me in after school leadership programs. Now what I know is sports would have been great for me too, both, right? Because girls in sports is powerful. But my mom has inspired a lot of the work that I do. On the other side of it that I don't talk about as much as she inspired me to pursue my ambition, she was forced out of the workforce because of microaggressions and pay inequities and that struggle of parenthood and career. And that is why I work so hard for women to feel seen, heard, and valued, and to stay in this, because our identity is so closely attached to what we do each and every day.
And as leaders, I think the data is pretty clear now. We're seeing women in leadership positions being the biggest recovery and change agents.
Oh, yes.
And what is it that you think women have that make them great leaders?
Oh, it's not that I think it. It's all backed up in data. My favorite study started pre-pandemic and continued during it. It was a company that does 360 degree. So they ask your teammates, your boss, people that you report to, everyone. 60,000 leaders around the world interviewed before the pandemic and then through it. women outperformed men on 84% of the leadership qualities that retained people, engaged people, made them loyal to a company. And they were things like, yeah, women also are hard drivers for results, but they can do it with empathy. They can do it with also caring about your well-being. You know, COVID, hi, whether you were infected or you were losing a family member, stopping and saying, this is important that we talk about each other's health. They also are community minded, right? They're thinking about, okay, what is the larger purpose and meaning of our work? Integrity comes up a lot in association with women. You know, gravitas is grace under pressure, but it's also like making a decision that's inclusive, but also like holding your own self accountable to staying true to your values. You don't say one thing and then do something different in your personal life. So those are the things I'm really proud that we now have enough data, that we're decades of data, not enough data, decades of data. And we're shouting from the rooftops like, hi, global crisis. We led pretty well. Like, give us the ball. Like, put us in the seat of power along with you. We're not saying he loses, she wins. We win together. When women are in the lead, it benefits everyone.
I love that. we don't have enough
so much time.
I
know.
And a lot of us are working from home still. Something dominating the media right now is the return to work. We've got a lot of corporates talking about what their policy is going to be, but predominantly we're still seeing people transition.
Yeah.
Before we finish today, what are your top tips for women who are doing that office or home struggle to set a healthy boundary? Because I always joke, I live at work now. And so what are your top tips for women and actionable things that they can do right now to survive the at-home grind?
Yeah, and I don't even want to associate it just with like where you work. This is a huge attitude shift that we need to do about our time. First, we need to value our time equally as men's. Like, everyone's time is valuable, right? And so the first thing to do, I do think, is that step about your values. Like, there's a million things we may value. You have to pick three. Mine are community, growth, and gratitude. And so I have to look at my calendar and say, what activities am I doing that line up to this, and see where it's disproportionate? Because let's say your calendar is all work, right? And even if you are passionate about your work, the data shows if you're passionate about your work, you are not immune to stress and burnout, right? So the fact of like looking at your calendar, for me, coming to Vegas, leaving my 4 and my 8-year-old, my husband who also had to travel this week, there's just lots of stuff, right? But Sparks, the global experiential marketing agency that sponsored me to do this work, they make me a part of their team. I go to dinners with them. I feel like a part of them, and I'm an entrepreneur, right? So that feels really good. I have gratitude because I get to meet you and other women that feel what I'm talking about, and we grow from having these conversations. So that's like a big thing, I think, for all of us, is to look at how our schedule lines up. The boundaries thing, like the shortest thing I can give you on that is no. We have to learn how to say no, and it's hard and it's a tightrope because we're judged on our likability and, you know, how we politely push back. But you have to practice with a language. So that I have a video coming out on my website in a couple weeks about ways to say no and retain like your rapport with your teammates. But you have to practice it and put it in your own language. We deserve to value our time and set boundaries and say, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do.
That's magnificent, Joan. You've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with us today here on The Scoop. So many little nuggets of gold. Thank you again. Have a wonderful show.